Really, really good talks coming up tonight. We're going to do a couple of short talks and a couple of more substantial talks. And there's some really, really interesting topics, so we hope you find them really interesting and enjoyable. So the regulars amongst you will know that this is a new space for us. This is kindly donated along with the pizzas and the beers by Australia Post. I'm really happy with this space, so I hope they keep on doing that. So I'd like to suggest a round of applause for them. Thank you. Okay, so given that this is a new space and some of you may not be aware, if you need the bathroom, it's kind of that way. Hope you leave plenty of time to find it. It's not really a maze, but it's sort of left and then down a bit and then on the right, and I think there's signs. Anyone really need to go now, and we can possibly just all go down together. See if you can hold it. So what's happened? It's been a little while since we've had one of these. We've got a jobs board. Has anyone been on that? Are you looking for work? Anyone? Awesome. Someone's scratching their head. I don't know if that was a, yeah, I am, or shit, my boss is behind me, or maybe just an itchy head, I don't know. But there's a jobs board on Meetup.com, and I had a look a couple of days ago, not because I'm looking for work, in case my boss is here, but just to see what's going down. There's loads of jobs on there, so do check that out. And there's a new Slack channel. I don't know if anyone's seen the chatter about that, an Angular Melbourne Slack channel. The details again are on the Meetup site, and there's already, I don't know, 40, 50 people? 60 people yammering away on that. So I've already had to turn notifications off, which is generally a good sign about the Slack channel, I think. So get on that. I don't know whether we've got particularly many channels going on, but if you've got some questions about technology or looking to make connections, you know what Slack's all about anyway. What else? We're going to record tonight. Courtesy of PageUp. There's a camera over there, so if any of you have any aspirations of being on film, just run over into that corner and you'll be famous. So another round of applause, I think, for PageUp for doing that. That's really good. Thank you very much. I don't know if I have anything else really important to jabber on about. There's one thing I do want to say, because I have to do this every time I get in front of people. Who's heard about BuzzConf? Show of hands. Awesome. That's really, really exciting. So BuzzConf, and I'm hoping that's because you've actually heard about it and not just read it on a t-shirt. It's a conference that I've been working on for a few months with some friends. It's a world first, really. It's a festival to do with emerging technology. So unlike a normal conference where you go there, you learn some stuff, you go home, it sort of stops. We're putting everyone in the same place for a whole weekend. We've got camping, we've got live music, we've got entertainment for the kids. There's really no excuse not to go there. So you can go there for a great weekend with the family, and then on the side you can sneak off and go to some presentations, some workshops. You can build a robot. They've all got the NodeBots guys there doing NodeBots, programming robots with JavaScript. We've got 3D printers. We've got virtual reality, augmented reality, all this really funky emerging technology stuff. And everyone that's running these sessions, they're there for the whole weekend. So you can really pick their brains. And there's a discount code. Almost forgot about that. NGMelv, use the discount code and you get really cheap tickets as well. It's much cheaper than a normal conference. Get down there. So that's my plugging bit done. Who wants to learn something? Oh yeah, that's what we're here for. We're learning something. Anyone enthusiastic about that? I think we got Alex would like to talk about some user-centric performance. So let's welcome Alex to the stage. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rick. We also had discussion on the Meetup page that we would do actually Periscope live streaming. If anyone is actually keen to do that, that would be amazing. But anyone with a phone and internet? No? No one? Okay, well, maybe next time. Anyway, we'll put that video on the YouTube, and other people can actually access it online. Let me then start my talk. So my name is Alex, and I will be talking today about performance, the way users perceive it. So, you know, like we all know that slow websites are like pretty silly and our users don't like it. But what does it actually mean slow for us developers? You know, I heard that jQuery is slow. I heard that ng-repeat is slow. I actually heard that, you know, for in loop is slower than for loop. I know, I even heard that Angular is slow. How weird is that? However, like if you start to think about that, what is slow? Is 100 milliseconds slow or fast? But I think it depends on the application. If you 100 millisecond delay for an e-commerce website, it's probably pretty decent and it's not that bad experience. But what about 100 millisecond delay for the game? So it probably feels pretty bad at least. So when we developers talk about performance, we usually think about the page load time. And is it really enough? I think it's not. Like, did you know that 1 megabyte of web page content takes 15 seconds to load on 3G network? And most of the websites are well over 1 megabyte in size these days. And at the same time, our stats show that still lots and lots of people access internet with 3G-like speeds. But it's not actually that bad. I took that speed test a couple of days ago in this office, and you see it's almost 42 megabits per second download speed. I think it's pretty awesome. So kind of problem is solved, but not really. The graph, the blue graph on the top, shows the page load time as bandwidth increases. And we actually see quite spectacular increase of load speed when we go from 1 megabit per second to 2. It's like almost half. But then increasing the network bandwidth doesn't really make much difference. In fact, upgrading it from 4 megabit per second to 10 megabit per second increases the load time only by 5%. On the contrary, the graph on the bottom shows the page load time as latency decreases. And you can see that for every 20 milliseconds of latency decrease, you get a linear decrease in the page load times. So you can see that latency is really the bottleneck. And yes, I know that business and designers love spinners. Yes, they think that solves the problem, but don't get me wrong, I'm not against spinners. You know, some of them look pretty awesome. But if you think of your user staring for 15 seconds on those super cool spinners while your website loads, like, is it really a good experience? How can you claim that you are delivering a user-centric experience for your website, a user focus, you focus on your user while you build an application, if you have to ask him to load, like, wait for 15 seconds looking at your spinners? I think it's not really a solution. So where is this happy middle, where its website is not too slow, but at the same time it's not too expensive to build and host? So I think we need some metrics. Now, which metric is really important? Like, DOM content loaded looks to be quite important, and FPS maybe. But if you think from the user perspective, does actually a user know the first byte time of your website? Does he care about the jetstream score of your website? Really? Probably no. So why don't we actually focus on the user, what user actually cares about while we build the website? So if you focus on the user, everything else will follow. That's Google's company philosophy. And you know, what does the user actually feel when they navigate and use your application? Well, apparently it has been solved long, long ago. Back in 1993, Jacob Nielsen published his research about usability engineering. And he came up with some numbers. Most of you probably are familiar with them. So 100 millisecond delay feels like instant response. Website looks like amazing, everything works like there is no delay. Up to 300 milliseconds, user can see a slight decrease between your action and reaction of the application, but it's still pretty good. It's actually very good. Up to 1 second, user still has keep the focus and can seamlessly navigate from one piece of work, like from one action to another. Over 1 second, user starts to lose focus and attention. over 10 seconds, well, you already lost users' attention. So Google Chrome team came up with something they called the Rail Performance Model. And Rail is a user-centric performance model, which basically says that every app has 4 distinct aspects of its life cycle. And that response, animation, idle, and load. So if you have a look at more detailed, at the load, for example, so it says that we have to deliver some interactive content within 1 second. It doesn't mean that we have to load the entire page in 1 second, but we have to actually produce usable content, something that the user can actually read, interact, click buttons within that time frame. And no, I think spinners doesn't count as interactive content. Well, not sure how we actually interact with spinner. So, and I wouldn't focus on this too much because probably there are lots of articles on how to speed up load time of the Angular application. Next, animation. You know, most developers, actually, me including, don't really care about animation, like the FPS. Who cares, really? And I didn't before I actually saw this video. I think it's pretty amazing and illustrates what actually FPS means for the user. Well, it means smoothness. It means nice experience. So if you build animation, if you spend actually time, invest time building animation, let's build it right. Let's build it with 40 FPS frames per second. Next one is response. So response time has to be within 100 milliseconds. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to finish all your actions within 100 milliseconds, but it means that you have to acknowledge user response within that time frame. I often see websites where I click a button and nothing happens. I wait a couple of seconds and then something comes up. And that's because they actually, once you click the button, they start doing some heavy lifting. They will send an AJAX request to the server, and you just think what's going on? Like another example would be an input field where you start inputting something, and then some smart guy came up with real-time validation, and you don't see anything actually popping up in your input field. How frustrating is that? Oh, talking about that, I actually came up across a very cool website.
Current devices. If we move this down to 50 milliseconds, that's significantly better than most devices on the market, but it's still quite a bit of lag, even at these slow speeds. Now, if we move that down yet again to 10 milliseconds, you can see it's dramatically better in each of these steps. The user preference is very clear that it just gets better and better. But if you look closely, you can see it's not really staying on the finger, it's kind of rubber banding around it.
And
so if you move all the way down to 1 millisecond, then you can see now it's really staying on the finger. And in fact, if you were playing with the real setup, you would notice a real perceptual cliff that this really starts to feel like a real physical object.
Well, obviously, most of us are building, not building games, but business application. And for that reason, having 100 millisecond delay is a pretty good experience for the user. Again, if the action takes long to execute, every 500 milliseconds, it can just notify user about some progress. And again, if that action actually takes more than 500 milliseconds, you probably want to think about putting that out from the main thread, maybe as a service worker or executed actually on the server. So basically, don't block the user. And another one is idle. So idle is period of user inactivity. And it's actually very easy to detect. Like, does the user use mouse? Does the user press any key? Does the user actually wait for an action or an animation to complete? And there are some Angular modules for that as well, like ng idle and Angular presence. Oh, and by the way, Angular 2 is pretty good in spinning off service workers. So make sure you check it out. So, oh yeah, that's it. It actually took way too much time. It's for lightning talks. It's supposed to be much lower, but feel free to talk to me after the talks. And well, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. So we've got David coming up next. you're connected. Sure. All good to go.
Okay. Hi everybody. My name is David Wen, and I'm going to be talking about how to using MinStack CMS. So how to develop a website without Apache, without PHP, purely JavaScript products. MinStack means we are using MongoDB, Express.js, AngularJS, and Node.js. And there's a guy, his name called King Wilson. He wrote a book, Learning AngularJS, a guide to develop AngularJS. He made an open source code called Aurora CMS. This one is purely based on MinStack. So from here, I put that one, that's the website. And if you log in the username Meetup and the password 915, and you will see the how to set up and configuration. All the process, all the steps tell you how to set up a MinStack CMS on Ubuntu. Because I do the light talk, so I just shorten. So basically you got two parts. Part one, you install MinStack first. If you click that one, you go to DigitalOcean. That one, I follow that page to install everything MinStack successful. However, I make some notes because last night I tried to install the MinStacks on this computer is got the Linux 15.04. There's something wrong there. I found a way to work around. So from the website, so I put some notes here, is like notes 1 in part A, you have to install a Java virtual machine. And you have to make sure to check the node.js.org. Make sure when you install, make sure you get the latest version. Because from the DigitalOcean, that's the older one, there were 10 point something. I found that currently it's 12.7. Then Node 3, don't forget you have to also install the Ruby and the Sass. I put all the commands there. And then number 4, that's a tricky one. Is I just found last night when you install Ubuntu 15.04, the MongoDB crashed for some reason. So I found a way how to work around. That's a very good one. And another one is when you completely install the MinStacks, you have to make sure, don't forget to install npm. That's very important because after that, when you install the CMS, you have to use the npm command. So now part B is how to install the CMS, Aurora CMS version 2. It's very easy. This will only a few minutes, and the option 1, I did option 1, I make sure everything gets the latest version. And then option 2 is you just get from the GitHub. When you install when you finish everything and you try to launch the site, you will do like sudo, then you got node, then you got like server.js. Sometimes we'll say you're missing some parts like a TR, and or you missing a little like mkdirp. You just try to install those tools. Those things after that should be alright. Then you run the command, it should be fine. The screen should be looks like. Look. when you everything all up and running, when you go to your local host, of course, I think you are installing your local computer, right? I'm not talking about the VPS right now. And then that should be looking like that way. Then you got a default login is for the super user. The super user default login, you can log into here. Okay. Super user, right? From here, it's very important to have a look. It's a very interesting one because I go to the website to show you how to do it. Also, I will show you something about the source code. When you install first time, you will see the whole structure just exactly same as that folder. That's the whole thing within your Linux open system. You'll see the whole folder that's there. Angular, developer, front end, public. You got two folders. One is for admin part and then templates. That templates, one folder default, which means you got a one theme templates. Like a DS-101, you got another theme, different kind of layout. And you can do as many as you want. So I show you something about another thing, like I do the default one. Then I show you something, the partial part is a very important part. That's the one you manipulate everything for the front end. And another one will show you when you go to the admin part, how to using different table fields. And then with the backend source code, you can do whatever you want for the front end layout. But this one is a very, very basic one. When you dig into deep, you can design lots of beautiful front end. But the guy came, he ran online hosting for the main stack websites. He got around about 2,000 clients. Now, I show you the templates part because there were so many things here. I have to pick a few, right? Because I do the light talking. Okay. From here, current layout is the default one. Now I go to King Wilson, his layout. I click that one. Then you have to make sure here are always Angular templates, all right? If you go to no, then it will cause problems. And then here you put yes. I switch to the next scene. Then I go to the live side, have a look. See? So that's called a switchable template scene. If I pick another one, let me choose that one. They are trying to match with WordPress. Now I switch back to the default part. Another thing I'll show you a very good one is show you like you see that the default admin page, they got 4 tables. Actually, that 4 tables is very good for you to manipulate the front end layout when you design the back end. I'll show you something, all right? Like the box, all right? you can see when you do the box here, and also they got a rich text edit down, so you can do something contents here, right? Because when I first installed, I walk around, it seems very hard to understand because there are no any detailed instructions. So what you see here is that top menu, which means because you see the source code, which means you all put everything on the top. So all the items here listed, you have to make sure you turn on the top menu. So if I change to center, then the section I also take off the menu. Okay, for something. So it should be disappeared from the top menu for the box. Let me have a look. And we have a look here. The box should be gone. It's gone. So actually the table, you can like the location of the table here. Like the section, I'm going to call the front page. So only the location. Location, like that part. Actually, you can add whatever you want when you design sites. Like here on the center, you can do the left. You even can add like a news or fresh news or things. Then when you do the Angular front end and talking with database, you can how to do different things by yourself. So I found that the CMS is very good for Angular developed for websites. Actually, it's a very quick one. If you got those things to do, a website, you can do in a very short time, up to make sure it's up and running. Otherwise, you can do everything from scratch by yourself. It's very slow. The thing is, there were lots, because this was with open source, there were lots of Angular developers, they submitted lots of good things like online shopping, Karl. This one also is open source code. And they got online form submit, and they got quite a few good ones. But you got to take some time to understand it because they got no detailed instruction. So basically that's it.
Thank you very much. It's good to see such comprehensive bits of software coming out, isn't it? With great stacks. So we've got Karl's coming up now. You've spoken at this meetup before, haven't you?
No.
No? Okay. Right. I don't know. I've only been to all of them. I can't be expected to remember. But Karl's going to talk about shared Angular components in enterprise. Thanks very much, Karl.
Hi. So my name's Karl. I'm a front-end developer here at Australia Post. Been here almost 2 years now. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, I guess, how we've started to try and think about making front-end development, I guess, a little less haphazard in some ways. So when I started here in February last year, we were developing web apps in kind of, I guess, pretty much the same way that we've been developing web apps for the last 10 years, which is a Maven or Ant build script that builds up a WAR file that gets deployed into Tomcat. And that was just like all of our front-end code was really just the stuff that was under source main web app. and there was no real, I guess, separation between front end and back end code. And front end, as I say, it was really just the assets that they get bundled into the WAR file. I guess when we started, I guess, separating things out, the approach that we took early on was you just take that WAR file and then you just take out the front end stuff, anything that's not under the webit folder, and chuck that on an Apache server, and that was your front end deployment. So I guess when we started to look at, I guess, other options for front end development is that, you know, we wanted to be able to, I guess, treat front end development sort of as its own thing, you know, not just something that was bound to the back end stuff. So started looking at using things like running a Node server to run its own like build scripts, its own development service, and that, you know, that came with its own challenges. So I've heard it said that front end development is kind of like it's when you're looking at the modern web, you sort of got to embrace the chaos. It's not as well established as back end, which has been, you know, going on for the past, well, I don't know, 10 years or so in Java development, certainly, in my career. Middle blank here. So yeah, so moving to Node meant that we had the ability to write JavaScript that could I don't really have any presentation or anything set up. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I'll just describe what we have here at Australia Post now in terms of our setup, and I'll probably just leave it at that really, because I didn't prepare for this as well as I thought I had. So what we've got here, we've got basically we've set up. I don't know if anyone's well aware of Nexus, Sonatype Nexus, as it's a pretty standard repository, I guess, for Java components. One thing they added recently was the ability to basically set up an NPM registry in that environment, and that one, so basically that gives us the ability to publish our own local private NPM modules. So NPM has previously had the ability to do private modules, but they actually ended up being deployed in the global NPM registry, which with a flag that's private, and then I guess you could publish scopes and try to restrict the access, but it wasn't really suitable for enterprise development, where there's, I guess, a strong focus on trying to want to keep the components, that might be sensitive or contain, business logic that you're not particularly comfortable publishing out into the general internet with no real control over it. So I guess it was identified as a real need for a host that registry in the enterprise itself. So that functionality was added to Nexus just a few months ago. It's we've sort of jumped on board with that, I guess, for us to be able to use that. And yeah, so what we really give us the ability to do is, so we develop modules internally and then we can publish them into that. And basically gives you set up your local environment so that you can actually pull from that registry. It's also, it has a standard Nexus features where you can set up like a mirror repository and then group your local repository and your mirrors together, so that you basically have a single URL where you can get everything that's available globally, as well as all the things that are available in your own repository. And using that gives us the ability basically just to publish our own modules that are specific to our own business needs, whether it's across the organisation or on a per project basis. That's the ability, so that, you can manage that internally. You can develop, publish, and consume that stuff without having to worry about whether your top secret business logic is available to who knows who competitors out in the field. So it's I guess kind of early days for what we're doing with this. It's also very chaotic and very untested. I know there are a lot of bugs in the NPM support in Nexus, closely following the next version out, and in some cases working on some pretty interesting workarounds. I noticed one issue that came up that we tackled was that if you ever downloaded one version of a module, Nexus would never again check to see if there was a new version of that module, and you'd basically be stuck with it. And we sort of have to implement a daily deletion of remote metadata, so that we're basically only stuck with that one version until tomorrow, where hopefully you'll be able to retrieve a new one. We've only, I think, broken our build once because of that feature. Actually, have to do a manual deletion of that. But that's, I guess, kind of an example of how early it is for this kind of, I guess, JavaScript-focused repository. So one of the things we're trying to do now, I guess, leading from that, is use this resource to create a set of modules that support rapid development. To rather than having to set up an entirely new application every time you want to set up a site, or copy and paste the last project you work on and change all the variables into the current project, is to actually have a build system that knows how to bring in the common assets that might be shared on across projects, or the common branding, fonts and libraries and stuff like that. And as I say, it is quite early days here with this one. It's not something we're trailblazing with this, and maybe in a few more months I'll be able to give you some more better description of what we're doing. But that's basically it on that.
Do you want to take any questions?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions on that, I'll be happy to take those.
Why modules compared to, say, like subtrees or submodules? Why?
Well, I know there's been some issues with Git submodules. Certainly, I mean, I haven't looked at them recently, actually. In the past, that certainly seemed to have a maintenance headache of its own. I guess the reason we chose the NPM module approach is because it's a standard, or rapidly becoming a standard approach for this kind of front-end development. And I've certainly read some articles that suggest that a lot of people who were maintaining in particular Maven or Gradle or Ruby modules or gems have started, setting those aside and starting to focus on development on Node modules. And I guess the other advantage of Node itself is that as a JavaScript-based environment, you're using the same language in your build system that you are actually developing in. So obviously there's a lot less context switching, there's a lot more opportunities for reuse of logic that sometimes you might want to run on the server side. Certainly, we haven't got to this stage yet, but certainly investigating running unit tests of Angular services without having to spin up a DOM or a browser for very rapid stuff. So it just seems there's a lot more advantage using that than using just, I guess, pointing Git at someone, which I guess sort of becomes more of just a glorified copy and paste approach. Else?
I have a good question. I haven't done Java for quite a while now, but what you're saying is, when you have your waterfall thing, you're saying all the back-end stuff there, so all this sort of JSP sort of stuff, you're saying all that's being used in Node now, so that's what you separated out.
Well,
that we're talking about widgets, or NPM is to reuse reusable front-end bits?
Not really. So what we would do is, I guess we stopped using JSPs altogether a while ago, and it's really just back-end code, like Java classes, bringing up a Spring application, plus a bunch of front-end code that gets loaded in the browser. So it's really just, instead of bundling those projects together and extracting them out after the fact, it was more about engineering that you have your back-end stuff and that's developed independently of your front-end stuff, and they communicate through a well-defined API. And that, I guess more there's a discipline associated with that. Another advantage, of course, having that approach is that not just your web browser code you consume it, so like mobile browsers and other, I guess, less traditional front-end environments are also able to make use of those APIs with their own widgeting toolkits. That's it. Right. Thank you.
Karl. For those of you that don't know, I also work at Ozpost at the moment, and the work that Karl's done with some of the other really smart people here has made a really big difference to the way we work. Only recently we spun up an application in a day that would have taken weeks and weeks. We just say we want a reusable header, we want our authentication scripts to come from here, we want our style sheets to come from this module, and it all gets downloaded using NPM via Nexus. And there's a few headaches getting these modules perfect. I think, in fact, they're a long way from perfect, but once you've worked out how you're going to version them, how you're going to get default content in, it's very, very simple to build up a complex enterprise application in a matter of minutes. So it's an exciting thing to be working on. And I know that Australia Post are looking for clever developers. So contact one of the organisers here if you're interested in hearing more about that. And we've probably got some people floating around from. There's Richard over there. He's a great guy to have a beer with, and he'll probably even buy it for you. Because I've got a microphone and he hasn't. So. But yeah, talk to him if you're interested. So our last talk is from Michel. He works with PageUp, and I think probably that the regulars here would have remembered him from numerous other talks. Very clever cookie. Going to be talking about consumer-driven contracts with Pact. Thank you very much, Michel.
Just give me a second to set up here. Cool. Weird ratios on my side. Okay. Just start this off. Cool. So, I'm here to talk about deployments. And I have a big problem with it, right? The problem is that they suck. They really, really suck. You code, you deploy something, and I keep asking myself, how do you know it isn't broken? What if your API that you're depending on hasn't changed their schema? What if that API that's depending on another API hasn't broken their schema? And it just chains together. It's a big problem, and every single time I'm really nervous to hit that deploy button. That's going live, and it might break. And of course, there's integration tests, there's unit tests, there's tests upon tests. But those are just different ways of trying to add confidence that when you press the deploy button, it's okay. But then again, like integration tests, end-to-end tests, it's a strenuous process, and oftentimes it's very fickle. I don't know how many times I had to kick the box for it to restart after, oh, well, something didn't show up on time because it's a timing issue and stuff like that. This is where Pact is trying to make things a lot easier. Now, the best way for me to try to explain Pact is it tries to separate the layer between front end and back end. It's not particularly front end and back end, it's consumer and provider. Whoever needs to consume data and whoever has to give you data. And Pact is in between. The way it works from, say, if I'm a front end developer and I'm coding in Angular, I'm defining what I'm expecting Pact to give me back, and it does. It's just a mock server in between. And you define every single interaction that you might have with a particular consumer, an API that is your own, or it could be a third party. When you're finished and you're done all your tests and everything else, the end contract is just a simple file. It's a JSON file. It just says, here are the things that I'm expecting from this API. Here are the inputs and outputs. Right? Try to think of it as a unit test for APIs. And then from a backend perspective, I'm coding in backend. I'm doing my API calls, and I can run these contracts on my own local API to make sure that when certain inputs go in, not everything goes completely nuts, right? And that's kind of the whole point. And now more front ends that are dependent on this particular API, the more contracts you're going to get. And at the end, there's going to be a lot of contracts. But you get a very, very wide gamut of every single use case possible, which is good from a testing perspective. You know that when you press deploy, it should work. The best way I like to exemplify this is by using Marco Polo, because trying to think of two kids in a pool, the consumer is the one saying Marco, and the provider is the one saying Polo. So this is how you would write it in Pact. You know, given being in a pool, upon receiving a vocal sound of Marco, you reply with Polo. Right? Simple as that. Except, well, not as simple as that, because that's actually how this would actually look in HTTP terms. But it's very similar. Right? You have a GET request for GET under the path pool of a query Marco. In this case, the query is a regex, as it says it doesn't matter what the query is, as long as it's a query, a string, whatever. And I will respond with a status of 200 with a header application JSON, because I'm returning back JSON, and the result is Polo. You do that for every single interaction, and at the end, you get a very, very wide gamut of all the results of what you're expecting. And that's good. But is it too good to be true? Yes. Yes, it is. It's a bit ideological, and the technology itself is barely a year old. It was originally made by this lady from DS called Beth Scurry, and she made it with Ruby in mind, because that's the code that she was using it at the time. And Ruby has a very, very different workflow than, say, Node or Angular or pretty much every other code out there, because it's Ruby. Over time, there's been a .NET port, there's a Java port. I'm currently working on the Node.js port for the provider side, and I've also added a bunch of different utilities for front-end consumer side. And I'm going to work through some of the front-end stuff with you today. So, this whole project, Pact in itself has a different URL, but you can probably find it from this particular one. This is the foundation that I've kind of created this organization that has a lot of front-end stuff. So I want to concentrate on Node.js servers and front-end workflow. Let it be Angular, or it could be for anything, really, right? The whole point is HTTP being the protocol for everything, right? The communication of the world kind of thing. And Pact is there to really help you out. So I'm going to do a demo. I have no idea how this is going to go. Live coding in a large room of people, shit goes down. So I'm going to try to do my best. I'll try to go through a particular demo. I'm only going to show the consumer side, which is the front end side. I'm not going to show the back end side behind it. But anyways, let's go together. I don't want to drag on for too long. So, ooh, that looks weird from that ratio. All right, let me just scroll this down. So I have this project. Call it Pact demo. I actually just took AngularJS to-do. You guys might have seen the to-do lists from Angular when you're trying to learn about Angular. So let's just see what this does. So I have everything behind Grunt. It's my build server of choice, but I've been starting to think lately that I should probably be using Gulp instead. Config files starting to get a little bit big. So when I do a Grunt watch. When I do a Grunt watch, it builds everything and it does a test. This test should test everything works. It's actually nothing. It's just expect true to be truthy. Good test, right? We're going to expand on that. All right, so now I have a Delta task, essentially just watching my JavaScript files. So if I were to, there you go. If I am to go to this website, which is the one that I just compiled and creates a local HTTP server, this is the to-do list. This is literally code that I just copied over from the internet, changed a few things for the build server, blah, blah, blah. So if I do something, press enter, blah, it does all it's supposed to do based on the code that I got online. Great. So it's doing that. Right now, if I were to show this little piece of code here under services, there's to-do storage. And there's, actually, let's make this a little bit bigger. All right, yeah. So we have this localhost 9000. This is a HTTP GET, and it's saying, if that works, use the injector API, which is just the factory just under there, here. And it's saying use the actual server if it's available. Currently, it's not available. We don't have a Pact server. We don't have any servers whatsoever. So that's going to fail, and instead it's just going to use local storage, just to be able to store that to-do list that you're currently creating, right? So what I'm trying to do in front of you guys right now is to make sure that this localhost 9000 is going to work using Pact, using a mock server, to be able to show that it actually works. So, why is this not working? There we go. So first things first, I want to install something. So I want to install, first off, I have my package.json. Here are the dependencies, my dev dependencies. I also have a Bower for Angular and 2 and VC Common and stuff like that. So first off, actually, I'm going to install my a project called Pact. This is one that I created. Essentially, I've created this what I call an onion. You have Pact in the middle, which is the mock server. It's done in Ruby. And I don't know if you ever tried to use Node to try to spin up an extra, another process of any other language other than Node. It's a pain in the butt to just try to manage that. So around the Ruby server itself, I created this project called Patnode. Essentially, all it does, it creates an interface to be able to spin up as many Pact servers as you want, and be able to keep track of every single process. So you can, spin up 1,001 if you really want to. And then around that, I created grunt pack, just a grunt task, just to be able to spin it up. I need to also create a gulp version of that. So if I do npm install and I do save dev, that will hopefully install and not crash or anything. Hopefully. Never know in live coding. Get -7 on luck. So as you can see, installing Pact mock server for Linux x64, it installs the binary, which is specific to your operating system, which is taking longer than I expected because I'm currently tethering off my phone. All right, there we go. Should finish. Any time now. There we go. So that's installed. Good. Now what we need to do is go in our grunt file to be able to set up Pact. So in this case, the configuration for Pact is already there, fairly simple. Here's the task, here's the target. My options are, I want it to run on port 9000. I have cores on. I really don't have to have cores on, but just in case you have other developers from other places in your company network that wants to hit your server, makes things a little bit simpler. And I'm saying, when I'm done with my Pact, I want it to write to that particular folder. Now, in my grunt wash, is that big enough? Let's make that bigger. So, in my grunt watch, as you can see right here, I have build, connect build, karma continuous for unit testing. Here is where I would have my Pact start. I can just put that as Pact, and then I have an execute of Pact setup. Now that Pact setup, I'll go through it in just a second, but it's essentially all it is after my Pact server has finally spun up, it's running. When it runs Pact setup, it's saying, here are the interactions I want you to be doing, right? There's a few ways you can do this particular Pact setup. You can add the setup of the definition of your interactions within the test itself. So it could be unique for those tests, which is good. Or while I'm coding, what I like to do is have generic ones, the ones with regex and stuff like that, right? So if I were to send any kind of search string, it won't give me an error of, I don't know what you mean by this search string because you're being too specific, right? So I can just say whatever regex. All I'm doing right now is coding and doing all this other stuff. I'm not creating contracts just yet. It's my test that should be creating my contracts, but what I'm developing, I still want something to come up. I still want some mock data there. So this execute Pact setup, all it's doing is doing this setup, which then runs a Pact. I have some stuff here. Actually, I should probably remove some mock data, a lot of mock data. This was from another project that I was doing. And then some of the interactions right here. So I have mock service, given a search query, a search get request with a query, and will response with some response headers that's a variable that's already specified, and mock with results. So now, I don't know why it's not coming up. Something wrong with the display, I'm sure. There we go. So now, hopefully, I'm going to do my grunt wash. Pact should show up. Do init test, Pact demo, create a Pact with PID. There we go. So it ran through everything. So if you that's all the interactions behind it. Should probably remove the log. So it's saying right here, so WebRick is just a Ruby package for HTTP servers. It's started up on port 9000. It says so here, and afterwards it just runs it, packs it up, and just say, hey, here are my interactions. Go do your thing. I actually didn't set up the interactions for this particular project that I was working on for the to-dos, but what you can do, if I wanted to just show you something, is I should have a server on local 9000, 3000 for search with a query of there you go. That's the mock data that I had on my Pact server side. So as you can see, it's already there, right? I've just kind of created this. You have that interaction when I'm doing on this particular path of search with a queue. That query could be anything, right? It could be, not work, right? Anything. It will still return me exactly the same data every single time. If you wanted to, you could add the logic on the JavaScript side, just be able to say, hey, get different kinds of data, randomized data, whatever data, right? It's up to you what you really want to do with it, but that's not really the interaction that we want to do with it. Now, after all this, all right, so the way that I recommend doing it, this is the way that I personally like doing it, because it's the definition between what is a unit test versus an end-to-end test, right? In the Ruby world, they prefer that you use your Pact test and unit test. I don't like that because I find that it's too big of a unit, right? My unit tests are function-based, right? You have a function, a particular thing, input in, output out, you can test that very easily. That's what I use unit tests for in the front end. When you want to start using stuff that interacts with a server, this is when I use end-to-end testing. This is where Protractor comes in. Protractor being a web driver for Angular, right? So if I were to do my grunt test end-to-end, this is a task that I created, and all it does, sorry, it runs the web server, and then runs Protractor, and all it does is just kind of clicks around. So when I press that, it should bring up, sorry, it should bring up a new Chrome window there. As you didn't see anything render because it was really, really quick, and I don't have a lot of stuff in there, so the test really finished like right away. There's no rendering, it's not really waiting for any data at all, so you can't really see anything currently. But needless to say, it still ran, it still clicked around, it still did stuff for an end-to-end test. Now, it's interacting directly with the UI, and that's when I think is the best time to put your Pact test in place, right? Because that's when you would expect, I want from this button click to do these things, and then send it off to the server, and then the server can say, oh yeah, I actually got those things. It's probably the easiest way, or in my opinion, it's the easiest way of creating that interaction, defining those contracts. And at the end of it all, you can say, all right, now verify that all my contracts got hit. Essentially, you can Pact as the concept of verification. So if you were to define certain things, and your test run and set the end verify, and one of those things didn't get called, it's going to throw an error saying you defined this thing but nothing called it. That normally means either you added a definition that wasn't supposed to be there, or the thing that you're supposed to hit didn't get hit because something screwed up somewhere, right? You might have had an error bubbled up somewhere, or you found a certain input-output that was not working. So, here we are in the end-to-end test. So all my end-to-end tests are suffixed with end-to-end e2e.js. And in here, this is where you would normally create your definitions of what you want to do, right? In here, there's a lot of different other things you could do, but and I haven't had a lot of time to be able to do this properly. But you could also do an npm install of Patnode. Actually, I can actually show you a little bit of how to use Patnode because Protractor and all that runs over Node.js. Let's just use Pact. And I'm going to say Patnode. Cool. So before all over here, I can say my pact.create and the options that I want to set. So I say if I want to say 9,000 for your report, and I can say start, which will actually spin up my server, which I can store at the end of it all. When I've done all that, I can do my server.stop, or even delete if I so choose. All of this is done through promises, because I really like promises. So I'm just going to say done here instead of there. I don't need that there anymore. And I can put a promise on my start as well. Now, the thing about this one is probably going to do a port conflict because I already have the one running on 9,000, which I could always stop. But let's just try here and do that one. And they should spin up two servers, right? You now have that one server where you have your, I guess you'd say your, there you go. You now have two servers. You have the other server over here. You have the one server, which is the mock server that is genericized, right? The one for development, so that you just get data for whatever you want to do, change the styles, change the JavaScript, add more unit tests, whatever you want to do. But then you have the end-to-end test, which is where you start adding your more complex bits, the definitions, right? So the next step behind all that is to do a Bower install, and this is consumer.js DSL. Now this is a DSL, domain-specific language, that's been created by Beth as well. Essentially, it's a very, very simple Node library just to be able to communicate with the server and be able to say, here are my definitions, right? Not the best, and I think I can improve it. There's a few things still kind of missing from it. But at the very least, you can get it and start doing some definitions. So if we were to do consumer.js DSL, I don't like the name convention. So you can create on your before all as well. We'll create our mock service. Probably not the best name for it because it's not really a mock service. It's just a thing to communicate with the mock service. And that will be dsl.service with some options, one of which is, so this is where you would specify stuff like the name of the consumer. So this is for the contract, right? Behind it all you have, say, let's call it demo. And for your provider, you can specify the name of the provider as well. In this particular case, say, call it demo API. And you have the port of whatever you want to run it on. Say it's for 9,100. And weirdly enough, you have to give a button function. It's one of those quirks that I don't agree with, but because it's not my library, I can't change it right now. But it's probably something I will add on a little bit later to make it easier for front end. This works really well in Ruby world, but I don't like it personally. I also don't like callbacks, I like promises. So you have your mock service now that you've set up. Essentially, you just set it up for once in front of everything else. And what you can do on your after each is a way to clean it. So on your mock service, you can do a clean function, and you're supposed to be giving a callback here. So I'm just going to give done for the synchronous nature of it. So it's going to wait for the Pact server to say, hey, everything's been cleaned. So you clean out your interactions. Every single time you run a new test, you can run as many interactions as you want, and it just cleans it out for the next one. You could create a new server if you wanted to altogether. But that takes a little bit of time, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Right. And the other thing behind here, you have your mock service, and then this is where you start using giver. Yes, giver. This is where you start specifying the BDD aspect behind it. So given user inputs to do. What was the yeah, sorry, I'm trying to remember again the naming of it, because the way they've set up the project, the autocomplete behind it is utterly ridiculous. So it's, yeah, you don't have proper auto-completion behind it. Like, this is the actual file. There you go. Given upon receiving, sorry, get the mental blank there. Upon receiving something, like let me text something with request. This is where you can add your object, and you can specify stuff like path, blah, blah, blah. Headers, you can set up a lot of different things. Whatever data you want, you can set up the body. I'm expecting the body to be a blank object, right? That could be a particular interaction, right? Just a blank object. Or maybe you wanted the body to be, to say text, and that text is to be something, right? You can be as specific as that, or you can be using regex to be non-specific. So you can say in your text, I want it to just be any text. I don't care. As long as it's a string, good, right? So this is where you can do stuff like matching. So part of the DSL, the DSL dot, I think it's match dot, and there's a function called something. There you go. It was right there. Something like that. So essentially, what you're saying here, with this particular function, that contract is now saying, I want it to be something like this object. I want it to be an object. I want it to have a key of text, and I want that key to have a string under that, right? And you can get some fairly complex objects along the way to kind of create this contract. All right. I know that this is a little bit, it's some fairly complex stuff in general, right? Because there's a lot of stuff you have to kind of remember, and then there's a lot of stuff that you have to define beforehand. And yes, there's a lot of work involved, but I'm really, really hoping, and I mean, we're just starting to get there personally as a company, we're just starting to get to the point where packs are starting to work for us. But there is an end goal, and that end goal is to try to make things simpler, right? Where you set this up once, and hopefully that'll be it. You want to do test cases for all versions, that should be it, right? If you want to have an API that can go back 2 versions from 2 years ago, that'll be it. That's your test. That's your definition of every single person that's ever used your API. Like I said, very ideologistic, and it is, you know, it does take a little bit of time to get used to it, and I'm really, really trying to make this a lot easier to understand and use. And I know right now it's not there, but I'm really, really hoping that soon it will be. All right, so let's just say we have a body, we'll just call it something, that particular path. With request and what was the other one? We'll respond with. We'll respond with the status of 200. Don't have to say anything back. Right? Now, I am fairly sure this is going to blow up spectacularly in my face. Mostly because there's a few problems there already that I need to kind of fix. Yeah, that's what I thought. Too lowercase. Where the hell did I have that? Anyways, the point wasn't to show you the full game or actually create a whole app behind it, because I just don't have enough time. Because this takes a little bit of time to set up, but once you get going, you get going. Now, there's another concept behind all this called Pact Broker, and this is also something I'm trying to fix. Pact Broker is essentially, try to think of it as like the nexus or the NPM of all your contracts, right? While you're coding and you create contracts, the Pact Broker is where you send the contracts to after you're done, so that whoever needs to use it or use those contracts for the API, the provider standpoint, can then just point to it and say, who am I? In this particular case, I'm the demo API. Give me all the contracts specific to me for this demo API, and we'll return all contracts specific to it, and then be able to run all the tests on that. Like I said before, right now we can only do .NET, Java, Ruby. I'm really hoping of recruiting some of you guys to help me out with the Node.js version of it, and hopefully get the whole contract and broker thing a lot easier out there. I forgot, I don't think I have it here actually. I wanted to show, sorry, I don't think I actually have that project here on my local computer. I wanted to show what the actual Pact file actually looks at the end of it all. Let's see if I have it somewhere. Apparently not. Okay, I really want to show it to you. But essentially, all it is, the Pact file, it is just a simple JSON representation of what I have here, the request, respond with, the name, pretty much exactly what you have there, but in just a JSON format. And all it does, it just goes through every single one of them, right? And you can say specifically, I just want to run these ones. This is also, like I said before, very good for versioning, but there's other stuff that we need to be done to know where it's coming from and how to communicate with them if it needs to be. So a lot of different stuff that needs to happen for Pact. Very experimental. Definitely recommend you start using it, because I do believe if you're using microservices like we're currently doing at PageUp, it's a much better way to be able to keep everybody honest, to be able to say, hey, you just changed your schema altogether, but you didn't change the version number on your API and you broke everything on the floor kind of thing. Hopefully this will end that particular process of being able to say everything still works, because we still have all these packs. We have every single person that's ever used it. If you have any more questions, you are more than welcome to come see me after this. And you can always send me an email. There you go. Or actually, shit, I didn't put my email on there. But it's Michel@Boudreau@gmail. So it's just my name at Gmail. Please send me an email. Is there any particular questions? I know I kind of like brain dumped on all of you. Wow. Yes?
I did not have a good support for SOAP cyber. Has that been resolved?
That's an interesting question. I've actually haven't tried it with SOAP. I would imagine that if you have it like as any object, it could potentially be as a XML as well. I actually haven't tried that. I would have to get back to you on that because I really don't know. But also, who's using SOAP? It's good for like some of the older stuff. Yes, I kind of agree with that. But yeah, it's a very interesting question. That would actually, hey, you can always join the project and help out create that feature. All right, cool.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation, man. This works well with internal APIs. How does it go testing third-party APIs like Stripe or something like that? So
this is something I'd like to work on. Essentially, the Pact worker part of it. I want to create a SaaS, very, very simple, you know. I won't even call it a company, really. It's just a one instance, and all it does, it will accumulate your contracts, either internal or external, particularly for the one external, and all it does, it pulls that external one, say, every hour, right? And if something broke, it will tell you right away, instead of one of users coming over to you is like, hey, this doesn't work anymore. Because, you know, believe me, being a startup, or at least I used to be a startup, hate it when that happened. And it happens so many times on some new APIs that Google's working on, or even, you know, Meetup and stuff like that. They changed one little thing and half of your things don't work anymore. So it's definitely something I want to work towards. Yes?
So there are a few tools like API, which give you user interface to do mocking and all those things. Are you guys planning to do that stuff? You know, kind of UI interface where you can just put your request and response and it will just generate a mock API, right? API is like very used to, very simple to use.
Yes.
But it just gives you static response.
Yes.
That's the only problem.
So I've thought about it. It might be a thing that might be useful, but frankly, I don't really see the main reason behind it. As in, it's saving you time of just creating that static mock and be able to do that. But really, you want it in code, because then you can version control all of it, right? You can know every single step, what's been changed, and then you can even version control the contracts themselves. So unless I can hear a really good argument, as in like it saves a lot of time, you should probably do it in code anyways, right? Because if anybody wants to modify it, or if you want to share it out to your coworkers, because I'm hoping you're not just working on it by yourself, they would need something. They would need code somewhere, some kind of file representation of what you want it to do. And Pacts is a way of doing that. Potentially, we would have a way of creating Pacts just from using a UI, but then if you don't have any tests that really interact with it, I wouldn't really be confident on it, right? Anything else? All right, more beer.
Thank you very much, Michel. So I hope everyone's enjoyed the evening. I'd like to have one more round of applause for Ozpost for sponsoring the venue, for Alex, David, Michel and Karl. If any of you have something that you want to share on one of these meetups, please do get in touch with us. We always like to hear about people that are excited to share their experiences with Angular. What else did I want to say? We're looking for sponsors. We've had a few people talk to us about sponsorship, so if your organisation's keen, shoot us an email. Yeah, more beers, a few more pizzas as well. If you leave them here, everyone that works at Ozpost is going to have to eat cold pizza tomorrow. And I don't think that's a very good idea. So if you want to grab your empties and chuck them in a bin, help us finish off the beers and the pizzas. We'll pop across the road to the Elephant and Wheelbarrow as well, just in case they've got any beers they need finishing off over there. Don't forget to check out BuzzConf. It is the best conference festival that you'll ever hear about. And if you're keen to speak to someone about working at Ozpost, Richard will be loitering by the beers for at least a half an hour, I reckon. Thanks everyone for coming.